Picture this. You're in a crowded room, and someone says something that feels deliberately hurtful. The eyes of everyone nearby turn to you, waiting for your reaction. But instead of firing back or showing your frustration, you stay calm. You take a slow breath, offer a simple nod, and choose not to engage. In that moment, you aren't weak. You are exercising a rare and profound kind of strength. It's a strength that doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't seek approval or victory. It simply is. This is the power of invisible strength, something the ancient Stoics understood better than anyone. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That idea that our true power comes from within, not from how others see us or what happens to us, is at the very heart of Stoic philosophy. Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending things don't hurt. It's about building an unshakable inner foundation so that no matter what life throws at you, you don't crumble. You respond with clarity, purpose, and quiet resilience. This philosophy, practiced by everyone from Roman emperors to modern leaders, teaches that the strongest people aren't always the loudest. In fact, their power often lies in their silence, in their ability to control their reactions, to stay present under pressure, and to endure difficulty without complaint. This video is about how you can cultivate that same invisible strength in your own life. We'll explore how Stoic principles like emotional mastery, mindful presence, and voluntary resilience can help you build a deeper, more enduring kind of power, one that doesn't depend on outside validation or circumstances. This isn't about becoming invincible, it's about becoming grounded. It's about knowing who you are, what you value, and how to stay aligned with that even when everything around you feels chaotic. So if you've ever felt overwhelmed by emotion, distracted by noise, or uncertain in the face of challenge, you're in the right place. Take a moment to reflect. Where in your life could a little more inner strength make a difference? Let's begin this journey together. Stoicism teaches that our greatest power lies in how we respond, not in what happens to us. This might sound simple, but it's a complete revolution in how we see ourselves and the world. So much of our daily stress, anxiety, and frustration comes from a fundamental mistake. We spend our energy trying to control things that are simply not within our control. The ancient Stoics had a name for this life-changing idea, the dichotomy of control. It's the practice of sorting everything in your life into two clear categories: what is up to you and what is not. Epictetus, a philosopher who began his life as a slave, put it perfectly. Some things are within our power while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, our reputation, our office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. Your thoughts, your judgments, your actions, your character, these are your domain. The weather, traffic jams, other people's opinions, the stock market, whether you get that promotion, these are not. Every time you react with rage to a traffic jam, you are essentially yelling at the weather. You are pouring your precious inner energy into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. Mastering this distinction is where silent resilience is born. It's not about becoming passive or indifferent. It's about becoming incredibly active and focused on the one area where you are truly the author of your life, your inner world. Imagine you receive harsh criticism at work. The criticism itself, the word someone chose to use, is not within your control, but your assessment of that criticism, is it valid, is it useful, and your chosen response, whether to learn from it or to dismiss it calmly, is 100% within your power. That shift in focus from the external event to your internal reaction is the very essence of Stoic strength. It transforms you from a pinball, bouncing reactively off every bump and obstacle, to the player making deliberate choices. Think about where you might be seeking external validation right now. Do you feel a dip in your mood if a social media post doesn't get enough likes? Does your sense of worth feel tied to your job title or your salary? That's the external world holding the reins. True inner assurance comes from knowing you acted with integrity, that you did your best with what you had, regardless of the outcome. It's a quiet confidence that no one can give you and no one can take away. It's the foundation upon which all other invisible strengths are built. Have you ever noticed how your strongest reactions often come from things you can't control? That surge of anger in traffic, the sting of a critical comment, the anxiety about a future event. These emotional storms are almost always triggered by external circumstances. Stoicism offers a powerful tool to navigate this, the art of cognitive detachment. This isn't about becoming cold or unfeeling. It's about creating a crucial space between an event and your emotional response, allowing you to choose your reaction with clarity instead of being swept away by the initial wave. The Stoics practice this through a technique sometimes called viewing from above. Imagine you're in a difficult situation. Now, imagine mentally lifting yourself out of it and observing it from a distance, as if you were watching from a mountaintop. From this wider perspective, the problem doesn't necessarily get smaller, but your relationship to it changes. You see the context more clearly. The emotional charge lessens. The Roman philosopher Seneca captured the profound freedom this brings when he wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." He reminds us that our unchecked emotions, not the events themselves, are the true source of most of our distress. When we are enslaved by every passing feeling, we give away our power. Detachment is the practice of taking it back. Consider a modern example. You receive a harshly worded email from your boss criticizing a project you worked hard on. The immediate, raw reaction might be defensiveness, shame, or anger. Your heart races and you might immediately draft a heated reply. Cognitive detachment asks you to pause. Take that mental step back. View the email not as a personal attack but as a piece of data. Separate the facts, the feedback itself from the emotional interpretation and the tone it was delivered in. Ask yourself rationally, is there any useful information here I can use to improve? Is this truly about my worth, or is it about one specific task? This pause allows you to respond from a place of composed objectivity rather than reactive emotion. You might choose to acknowledge the feedback, address the valid points, and clarify any misunderstandings, all without your composure being broken. Think about a recent moment that triggered a strong emotional response in you. Perhaps it was an argument with a loved one or a plan that fell through. Now replay that moment in your mind, but this time practice viewing it from that stoic distance. What would it have felt like to mentally step back and observe the situation without immediately getting tangled in the feelings? How might that small gap have changed your words, your actions, or even just your internal sense of peace? This space is where your real power resides, the power to respond instead of simply react. Being fully present isn't just a mindfulness practice, it's a stoic superpower. In a world that constantly pulls our attention in a dozen different directions, the ability to anchor yourself completely in the here and now is a profound source of silent strength. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology coined terms like flow state or mindfulness. For them, presence was a fundamental discipline, a way of exercising control over the one thing we truly own, our attention. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this in his private writings, urging, Give yourself a gift, the present moment. He wasn't talking about a passive state of zoning out. He was describing an active, intense engagement with the immediate task in front of him, whatever it might be. This practice is the direct antidote to the two great thieves of our peace: anxiety about the future and rumination on the past. Both are illusions we have no control over, yet we allow them to drain our energy and fracture our focus. The Stoic remedy is to continually pull your mind back from these imaginary realms and place it firmly on your present duty. This isn't about ignoring the future. It's about recognizing that the only way to influence the future is by acting effectively right now. When your mind is fully occupied with the current action, there is simply no mental space for worry, for regret, or for the distracting noise of external opinions. Your power becomes concentrated like sunlight through a magnifying glass, making you more effective and far more resilient. You can practice this in the most ordinary moments of your day. Think about the last time you were in a conversation with someone. Were you truly listening to their words, observing their expressions, and understanding their meaning? Or was part of your mind already formulating your reply, checking your phone, or worrying about a meeting later? True Stoic presence means listening as if nothing else exists in that moment. Apply the same principle to your work. Resist the urge to multitask. Choose one single activity: writing that report, washing the dishes, reading a chapter, and pour your entire being into it. Do it as if it were the most important task in the world, because in that moment it is. You will find that the activity itself becomes less burdensome, and a quiet calm emerges from the simplicity of undivided attention. This week, make a conscious effort to reclaim your attention. Challenge yourself to just 5 minutes of completely undivided focus on one simple activity. It could be sipping your morning coffee without looking at a screen, taking a walk without headphones, or simply sitting and observing your breath. Notice the temptation to drift into planning or daydreaming, and gently guide your focus back. Observe how this small act of reclamation doesn't diminish your power. It consolidates it. The strength you build in these quiet moments of presence will be there for you when you need it most, providing an unshakable anchor in the midst of any storm. The ancient Stoics regularly practiced what they called voluntary discomfort. This wasn't a form of self-punishment or a bleak rejection of life's pleasures. It was a deliberate training regimen for the soul, a way to inoculate themselves against the inevitable hardships of fate. They understood a profound psychological truth: comfort, when it becomes a constant expectation, breeds fragility. By willingly stepping into minor hardships, they were building a reservoir of resilience to draw from when true adversity, which always arrives uninvited, finally knocks on the door. Seneca, who lived in immense wealth, was a strong advocate for this practice. He advised, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" His point wasn't that we should all live in poverty, but that by temporarily experiencing a lack, we shatter the illusion that our happiness is dependent on external comforts. We prove to ourselves that we can endure and even thrive with far less than we think we need. This practice works because it directly challenges our subconscious fears and attachments. When you voluntarily choose a cold shower, you're not just shocking your body, you're having a quiet conversation with the part of your mind that screams for comfort and ease. You're demonstrating in a small, controlled way that discomfort is not an emergency. It's a passing sensation that you have the power to tolerate. This rewires your relationship with hardship. When a major life stressor hits a financial setback, a professional rejection, a personal loss, your mind doesn't immediately spiral into panic. It has a reference point. It remembers, I have handled difficulty before, I know I can endure. This is the essence of building an inner citadel, brick by brick, through these small, voluntary acts of courage. Modern life offers countless comfortable alternatives, making this practice more relevant than ever. It doesn't have to be extreme. It can be as simple as taking the stairs instead of the elevator, consciously choosing to walk in the rain without complaint, fasting from social media or sugary snacks for a day, or even just sitting in a quiet room without any entertainment for 15 minutes. It's about intentionally delaying gratification, like waiting an extra hour for your morning coffee or reading a challenging book instead of watching television. Each of these small actions is a vote for your own self-mastery. They are subtle declarations that you are not a slave to your cravings or your circumstances. You are building a form of invisible strength that remains entirely internal, a confidence that comes from knowing you have voluntarily passed a small test of your own willpower. This week, consider where your own comfort zones have become a little too rigid. Where has ease become an expectation? Identify one small, manageable discomfort you can willingly embrace. It could be waking up 30 minutes earlier than usual, drinking your coffee black, or spending an evening without your phone. The goal isn't to suffer, but to observe. Pay close attention to the mental resistance that arises, the little voice that tries to negotiate or complain. Then, notice the quiet empowerment that follows when you move through it anyway. That feeling, that quiet knowledge of your own capability, is a fundamental piece of the unshakable inner power the Stoics spent their lives cultivating. We often underestimate the impact of bearing difficulties gracefully. In a culture that celebrates loud victories and vocal expressions of struggle, the quiet act of simply enduring can be mistaken for weakness or passivity. Stoicism completely reframes this. To the Stoic, endurance is not about merely waiting for a storm to pass. It is an active, powerful virtue. It is the conscious choice to meet hardship with steady composure, to absorb the blow without crumbling, and to continue moving forward without the need for fanfare or complaint. This is silent endurance, and it forges a character that is resilient, dependable, and profoundly strong. Epictetus, who knew suffering intimately, pointed to this as the highest wisdom: bear and forbear. Two simple words that contain a universe of strength. To bear is to withstand the burdens placed upon you. To forbear is to restrain yourself from the reactive outbursts those burdens might provoke. Together, they form the complete picture of Stoic endurance. This is not the endurance of someone who is defeated, but of someone who is unassailable. They understand that while they cannot always control the events that happen to them, they retain absolute sovereignty over their inner world, their judgments, their values, and their response. Think of the historical example of Cato the Younger, a Roman senator known for his unwavering integrity. When he found himself on the losing side of a civil war, he chose to take his own life rather than live under a tyrant's rule. While the act itself is extreme, the Stoics admired not the suicide but the principle behind it, his refusal to compromise his character, even in the face of ultimate defeat. His endurance was in holding fast to his virtue until the very end. His power was in his consistency, not in his victory. You can find modern, everyday applications of this principle all around us. Consider the daily commute. For many, it's a source of immense frustration, a wasted hour of stop and go traffic, crowded trains, and delays. The typical reaction involves internal grumbling, complaining to coworkers, or simmering with rage at every red light. This expends a tremendous amount of emotional energy on something that is utterly outside of one's control. The Stoic approach, the practice of silent endurance, would be to accept the commute as a simple fact of life. Instead of fighting it, you could use the time productively, listening to an audiobook, planning your day, or simply practicing mindfulness and observing the world outside the window. The circumstance hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has. You have transformed a test of patience into an opportunity for calm and even enrichment. The strength is in the quiet acceptance and the redirection of your focus to what you can control. Now, bring this concept closer to home. Bring to mind a current challenge you are facing. It might be a demanding project at work, a difficult phase in a personal relationship, or a persistent health issue. Notice your instinctual reaction to it. Is there a desire to complain, to seek sympathy, or to mentally resist the reality of the situation? Now, imagine applying the Stoic principle of silent endurance. What would it look like to bear this difficulty without vocalizing the struggle? How would it feel to forbear, to consciously choose not to react with frustration or despair? This doesn't mean you shouldn't seek practical solutions or support. It means that your internal state remains calm and intentional. Your power in this situation grows not from eliminating the obstacle, but from demonstrating to yourself that you have the fortitude to meet it with unwavering calm. This quiet perseverance, repeated over time, builds a core of inner strength that becomes your most reliable asset in an unpredictable world. What does the voice inside your head say when things go wrong? For many of us, that inner critic is the first to speak up, launching into a litany of blame, catastrophizing, and self-doubt. This is a disaster, it might whisper. You always mess things up, now everything is ruined. The Stoics recognized this internal narrator not as an objective reporter, but as the very source of much of our suffering. They understood that we don't just experience events, we experience our judgments about those events. And so, they dedicated themselves to the disciplined practice of mastering their inner dialogue, transforming it from a source of anxiety into a tool for resilience. Marcus Aurelius offered perhaps the clearest instruction on this, writing in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." His insight was revolutionary. Our reality is not shaped by what happens to us, but by the story we tell ourselves about what happens. This practice of monitoring and guiding our self-talk is an active, not a passive endeavor. It begins with simple awareness, catching that automatic negative thought before it spirals out of control. The next crucial step is to challenge it with rationality and compassion, to consciously author a new, more empowering narrative. A Stoic doesn't deny the facts of a situation. They simply refuse to accept a disempowering interpretation of them. For instance, imagine you give a presentation at work that doesn't land as well as you'd hoped. The initial automatic inner dialogue might be, "I completely failed. Everyone thought I was incompetent. I'll never be good at this." This narrative instantly creates feelings of shame and anxiety. The Stoic alternative involves pausing and interrogating that thought. Is it truly accurate that everyone thought you were incompetent? Is this single event proof that you'll never be good? A more rational Stoic reframe would sound like, "Some parts of my presentation were weaker than others. That is feedback I can use to improve for next time. This was one performance, not a final verdict on my abilities." This shift doesn't change the external event, but it completely transforms your internal reality, moving you from a state of defeat to a state of focused learning. The power of this practice lies in its ability to build a buffer between a challenging event and your emotional and behavioral response. Instead of being hijacked by a knee-jerk negative assessment, you create a moment of choice. You choose the narrative that serves your resilience and your growth. This is how the inner citadel is fortified, not with walls to keep the world out, but with a wise and compassionate inner guardian who carefully curates what is allowed to influence your peace. It turns every setback, every obstacle, into raw material for building a stronger, more rational mind. To put this into practice right now, take a moment to identify one common pattern of negative self-talk you recognize in yourself. Perhaps it's a tendency to assume the worst-case scenario or to personalize situations that aren't really about you. Write that down. Then, next to it, craft a Stoic alternative, a calm, factual, and empowering restatement that focuses on what is within your control and how you can move forward with virtue. This simple act of rewriting your internal script is a profound exercise of your innate power. Premeditatio Malorum, or the Premeditation of Evils, is a Stoic technique for strengthening the mind. At first glance, it might sound pessimistic or even morbid. Why would anyone willingly think about bad things happening? But this practice is not about dwelling on fear or expecting the worst. It's about vaccination for the soul. Just as a small, controlled exposure to a virus builds immunity in the body, a deliberate and rational visit to our fears in the mind builds resilience against life's inevitable shocks. The Stoics weren't trying to make themselves miserable. They were engineers of the human spirit, and this was one of their most powerful tools for constructing unshakable peace. Seneca, who faced exile and ultimately death by the orders of a tyrant, knew the value of this mental preparation firsthand. He advised, "He who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." His insight reveals the core mechanism at work. Anxiety and suffering are often amplified by the element of surprise. We are caught off guard, and the sudden shock paralyzes our rational mind, leaving us swimming in pure emotion. By anticipating potential adversity in a calm and controlled setting, we perform a mental rehearsal. We walk through the scenario logically, we map out our response, and in doing so, we strip the future event of its terrifying uncertainty. When you have already calmly accepted a possibility, its actual arrival feels less like a catastrophe and more like a situation you are prepared to handle. Let's bring this ancient exercise into a modern context. Imagine you have a deep fear of losing your job. The typical, unconscious reaction is to repress that thought, to push it away whenever it surfaces, which only gives it more power as a lurking, unexamined dread. Premeditatio Malorum asks you to do the opposite. Sit down in a quiet moment and deliberately invite the thought in. Don't just worry about it, analyze it. Okay, what if I did lose my job? What would be the actual practical consequences? I would need to update my resume. I would need to contact my network. I might have to cut back on non-essential expenses for a while. I have skills and experience. I would find another job eventually. Notice how this process moves you from a state of panicked emotion to a state of practical problem solving. You haven't manifested the event, you have demystified it. You've transformed a monstrous, vague fear into a series of manageable steps. This same practice can be applied to fears about health, relationships, or financial stability. The goal is never to wallow in the negative outcome, but to see it clearly, accept its possibility, and reaffirm to yourself that you have the capacity to respond with virtue and reason, no matter what happens. Now take a moment to try this for yourself. Bring to mind a current worry, a potential outcome that carries some anxiety for you. It doesn't have to be a major catastrophe. It could be a difficult conversation you're avoiding, a project that might fail, or a minor personal setback. Close your eyes and visualize it happening, but as you do, follow the Stoic path. Breathe through the initial emotional reaction. Then begin your rational planning. What is the first thing you would do? What resources do you have available? What would a wise and courageous response look like? By mentally walking through this process, you are not attracting bad luck. You are building an inner framework of strength that ensures you will never be completely blindsided by fortune. You are proving to yourself that your peace and your power do not depend on everything going right, but on your ability to navigate whatever comes your way. Think of your emotions like the ocean. Stoicism teaches us to seek calm waters, not avoid storms. This state of balanced composure, known as equanimity, is not about feeling nothing. It's about not being ruled by the crashing waves of intense emotion, whether they are waves of euphoria or despair. The Stoic goal is a steady, resilient mind, a deep inner calm that allows you to perceive events clearly and respond with wisdom, rather than being tossed about by every change in fortune. It's the difference between being the ocean itself, turbulent and reactive, and being the skilled sailor who navigates those waters with steady hands, knowing that storms are temporary and that their skill lies in maintaining course. Epictetus, who began his life in bondage, understood this power better than most. He offered a simple, profound reminder. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. He wasn't saying that external events are meaningless. He was pointing to the immense power we surrender when we allow those events to dictate our inner state. When your happiness is tied to a promotion, you become vulnerable to the whims of your boss. When your despair is triggered by a critical comment, you hand over your self-worth to a stranger. Emotional equanimity is the practice of taking that power back. It is the conscious decision that your peace is non-negotiable, that it is rooted in your character and your choices, not in the unpredictable events of the outside world. This balanced approach is invaluable for making clear decisions, especially under pressure. Imagine receiving 2 different pieces of unexpected news in a single day. First, you get a call that you've inherited a significant sum of money from a distant relative. The initial surge of excitement is powerful, tempting you to immediately start planning lavish purchases. Later that same afternoon, your doctor calls with concerning but unclear test results that require further investigation. A wave of anxiety and fear immediately follows. A person without equanimity might be completely derailed by this emotional roller coaster, making impulsive financial decisions from a place of euphoria, then sinking into catastrophic thinking from a place of fear. The Stoic, having cultivated equanimity, would acknowledge both emotions, the joy and the concern, but would refuse to be governed by either. They would pause, breathe, and apply reason. They would recognize that the inheritance is a neutral event that requires careful, rational planning, not impulsive celebration. They would see the medical news as a call to proactive investigation, not a reason for panic. The same steady mind is applied to both fortune and misfortune. This week, make it a personal practice to simply notice the rhythm of your own emotional ocean. Without judgment, just observe. When do you feel a sudden high? Perhaps it's a surge of pride from a compliment or a jolt of excitement from a piece of good news. When do you feel a sudden low? It might be a dip of irritation in traffic or a plunge of sadness from a disappointing email. The simple act of observation is the first step toward mastery. Once you notice these extremes, gently ask yourself, is this intense emotion serving me? Is it helping me respond more effectively, or is it clouding my judgment? The goal isn't to eliminate feeling, but to create a small, sacred space between the feeling and your action, a space where your wiser, calmer self can choose how to proceed. This is how you build a resilience that isn't brittle, a strength that is both flexible and unwavering, no matter what the world brings to your shore. True power isn't about what you do, it's about why and how you do it. This is one of the most profound shifts in perspective that Stoicism offers. For the Stoics, inner strength wasn't measured by wealth, status, or even outward success. It was measured by the alignment of one's life with a clear, virtuous purpose. Your achievements might be taken from you by fate, but your character, the integrity of your actions, and the purity of your intentions is yours to keep forever. This is the bedrock of unshakable inner power. When your sense of self-worth is tied to external outcomes, you are perpetually vulnerable. A market crash can wipe out your fortune, a critic can tarnish your reputation, and time can fade your accomplishments. But when your self-worth is tied to your commitment to living virtuously, to acting with courage, justice, wisdom, and self-discipline, you possess a source of strength that is entirely within your control and utterly immune to the whims of fortune. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the known world, constantly reminded himself of this truth. He wrote, "In every act, ask yourself, how does this relate to me? Shall I repent of it? A little time and I am dead and all is gone. What more do I seek if my present work is the work of a rational being and a social being, and one who is under the same law with God?" This quote isn't about morbidity, it's about ultimate clarity. He's urging himself to perform every single action, no matter how small, as if it were his last, not with panic, but with profound purpose. Was this action done with integrity? Was it kind? Was it just? Was it the right thing to do, regardless of who was watching or what the reward might be? This constant alignment between action and virtue is what creates an inner compass that always points true north, providing unwavering direction even when the external world is shrouded in fog. Consider how this applies in your own life. Imagine you're faced with a choice at work. You could take a shortcut on a project, fudge some numbers, or withhold a minor piece of information to make a deal go through more smoothly. The external reward might be a bonus, praise from your boss, or a promotion. The Stoic, however, would weigh this choice against their internal virtues. The question isn't, will I get caught? Or what's in it for me? The question is, does this action align with my core value of honesty? Does it uphold justice? Does it demonstrate the courage to do the right thing even when it's difficult? Choosing integrity in that moment might not bring an immediate external reward. It might even seem like a harder path, but the internal reward is immense, the quiet, unassailable knowledge that you acted in accordance with your principles. That knowledge builds a foundation of self-respect that no bonus check can ever match. The same applies in relationships. Choosing to have a difficult conversation with compassion instead of avoiding it, or offering help without expectation of reciprocation, are acts of virtue that fortify your character from the inside out. This month, take a moment to look inward and define your own virtuous purpose. Which of the four cardinal Stoic virtues, wisdom, courage, justice, or temperance, feels like it needs more intentional cultivation in your daily life? Perhaps it's wisdom, in the form of pausing to seek understanding before making judgments. Maybe it's courage to speak up for someone who can't, or to set a difficult boundary. It could be justice, in striving to be fair in all your dealings, both big and small. Or perhaps it's temperance, practicing moderation and self-control in your desires and reactions. Choose just one. Don't make it a vague resolution. Make it a specific intention. For the next 30 days, let that chosen virtue be the lens through which you evaluate your decisions, both large and small. Ask yourself each evening, how did I live this virtue today? This practice moves philosophy from an abstract idea into the very fabric of your life, building a form of strength that is both invisible to the world and utterly essential to you. Not every thought that enters your mind deserves your belief. Our brains are constantly generating impressions, quick, initial interpretations of the events and words we encounter throughout the day. The Stoics realized that most of our emotional turmoil doesn't come from the events themselves. but from our rapid, unquestioning acceptance of these first impressions as absolute truth. This is where the crucial Stoic discipline of assent comes into play. It is the practice of creating a moment of pause between receiving an impression and giving it your full mental and emotional endorsement. It's the art of becoming the gatekeeper of your own mind, rather than a passive recipient of every passing thought. Epictetus, who focused intensely on the practical application of philosophy, gave us perhaps the clearest instruction on this. He said, "It is not the things themselves that disturb men, but their judgments about these things." He went on to explain that when we are faced with a disturbing impression, we must learn to say to it, "You are just an impression, and not at all the thing you pretend to be." This simple act of mental labeling is incredibly powerful. It creates a critical distance. You are no longer fused with the thought, you are observing it. You are acknowledging its existence without immediately accepting its narrative. This pause is the birthplace of your freedom. It is the difference between being carried away by a rushing river and standing on the bank, watching the water flow by. You remain dry, you remain in control. Let's take a very common modern example. Hearing a piece of gossip about a colleague, the impression arrives instantly. Did you hear that Sarah might be getting fired? I overheard the boss talking about restructuring. The undisciplined mind immediately assents. It accepts this impression as fact. It might then trigger a cascade of reactions. Anxiety, could my job be next? A judgment, Sarah must have messed up. Or even a desire to spread the rumor further to feel in the know. This entire chain of distress is built on a foundation of an unexamined impression. The person practicing the discipline of assent, however, intercepts that initial thought at the gate. They pause and apply reason. They ask, is this a verified fact or is it just hearsay? What is the actual evidence for this? Even if there is some truth to it, is it virtuous for me to internalize this or repeat it? By withholding immediate assent, they break the chain. They might choose to dismiss the gossip entirely as irrelevant noise, or they might file it away as unconfirmed information without any emotional charge. Their inner peace remains intact because they did not grant citizenship to a troublesome thought. This practice transforms your relationship with your entire internal world. A critical email is no longer proof of your inadequacy. It is just an email, a string of words to be evaluated rationally. A sideways glance from a stranger is no longer a sign of their disapproval. It is just a glance with a million possible benign explanations. Traffic is not a personal attack on your schedule. It is a neutral event involving other drivers. The discipline of assent asks you to become a scientist of your own mind, carefully examining the data of your impressions before drawing a conclusion. It is the ultimate tool for decluttering your mental space and conserving your emotional energy for the things that truly matter and are within your control. Your next strong impression is already on its way. It might be a flash of anger from a perceived slight, a spike of anxiety from a news headline, or a wave of insecurity from a social media post. When it arrives, see if you can catch it. Just for a moment, press the mental pause button. Literally take one deep breath and silently say to the impression, I see you. I will now decide if you are worthy of my belief. That tiny space, that single breath, is where your true power resides. It is the difference between reaction and response, between being a puppet of circumstance and the author of your own inner state. What stands in the way becomes the way. This Stoic paradox, often attributed to Marcus Aurelius, captures a radical and transformative approach to life's inevitable difficulties. It's a complete reframing of adversity, moving it from the category of things to be avoided to raw materials to be used. The Stoics didn't just believe in gritting their teeth and enduring hardship. they practiced a profound form of acceptance called amor fati, a Latin phrase meaning a love of one's fate. This isn't about passive resignation or finding a silver lining in every cloud. It's an active, embracing stance. It's about looking at every obstacle, every setback, every piece of bad luck and saying, "This too is for my benefit. This is part of my story, and I will use it to become stronger, wiser, and more resilient." Marcus Aurelius, who faced constant war, political betrayal, and personal loss, wrote in his Meditations, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He was pointing to this incredible alchemy of the human spirit, the ability to take the very thing that seems to block your path and use it as the path itself. This philosophy was lived out dramatically by the Stoics themselves. Consider Seneca, one of the wealthiest and most influential men in Rome. He was suddenly accused of adultery with the emperor's sister and sentenced to exile on the barren island of Corsica for 8 long years. From an external perspective, this was a catastrophic fall from grace, a loss of power, status, comfort, and connection. A lesser man might have crumbled into bitterness and despair. But Seneca did the opposite. He saw his exile not as a punishment but as an opportunity. It was in that isolation that he produced some of his most profound philosophical writings. He used the forced solitude to deepen his practice, to detach from the superficialities of Roman society, and to strengthen his inner world. The obstacle, his exile, literally became the way for his most lasting contributions to Stoicism. He transformed what was meant to break him into his greatest source of strength. You don't have to be an exiled Roman philosopher to apply this. Modern life is filled with its own versions of exile and impediment. Perhaps you were passed over for a promotion you worked incredibly hard for. The immediate reaction is one of deep disappointment, maybe even anger toward the person who got it. The Stoic approach of amor fati asks you to take a different view. What if this rejection is actually the way forward? What can you learn from this? Maybe it reveals a skill gap you need to address, or perhaps it signals that this particular company or career path isn't the right fit for your talents. The obstacle of rejection becomes the way to a more honest self-assessment and ultimately to a better, more fulfilling role elsewhere. Another example could be a personal health diagnosis that forces you to change your lifestyle. It's frightening and disruptive, but by embracing this new reality instead of fighting it, the obstacle becomes the way to a deeper appreciation for your body, to healthier habits, and to a more present and mindful way of living. The challenge itself becomes the very teacher you needed. Now, bring this concept into your own life. Bring to mind a current obstacle you're facing. It might be a financial strain, a relational conflict, a professional failure, or a personal limitation. Notice your initial feelings about it, likely frustration, resistance, or a sense of unfairness. Now try on the lens of amor fati. Ask yourself, how can this very thing that stands in my way actually become the way? What strength could it force me to develop? What clarity could it bring? What new direction might it point me toward? This isn't about pretending it's easy or enjoyable. It's about recognizing that within every difficulty lies a seed of equal or greater benefit. Your power lies in your ability to choose to water that seed. By consciously reframing your obstacle as an opportunity, you stop fighting against the current of your life and start using its energy to move forward, building a resilience that is not just about bouncing back, but about bouncing forward, stronger and more directed than before. When was the last time you chose silence over a sharp reply? In a world that often equates speech with power and quick retorts with intelligence, the Stoics recognized a deeper, more potent form of strength, the disciplined use of silence. They understood that our words are not merely expressions of thought. They are expenditures of energy, commitments of intention, and often the very fuel for unnecessary conflict. The founder of Stoicism, Zeno of Citium, famously noted that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. This simple anatomical observation contains a profound philosophical truth. True understanding and power come from receptivity, not just assertion. Seneca echoed this, advising, "Be silent as much as you can, speak only when you must, and then be brief." For the Stoic, silence was not an empty void or a sign of submission. It was an active, powerful state of presence, a tool for preserving inner peace, gathering information, and responding from a place of deliberate choice rather than reactive emotion. This practice of strategic silence serves several crucial purposes in building invisible strength. First, it acts as a protective barrier for your mind. Every time you engage in a heated argument, especially one driven by petty insults or trivial provocations, you are essentially allowing another person to dictate your inner state. You are handing them the remote control to your emotions. By choosing silence, you retain that control. You refuse to play a game you cannot win, because arguments rooted in emotion are not about truth, they are about dominance. Your silence becomes a declaration that you are not available for that kind of exchange. It deprives the conflict of the oxygen it needs to burn, allowing it to fizzle out without causing any damage to your equanimity. Imagine someone makes a sarcastic comment about your work in a meeting. The immediate, ego-driven impulse is to fire back a defense or a counterattack. This pulls you into a public, emotional sparring match that drains your energy and rarely changes anyone's mind. The Stoic alternative is to simply absorb the comment without reaction. Offer a calm nod or even just let the silence hang for a moment before moving the conversation forward. This isn't weakness, it's immense strength. It demonstrates that your self-worth is not so fragile that it can be shaken by a passing remark. You remain unruffled, your energy preserved for the tasks that truly matter. Secondly, intentional silence creates space for superior understanding. When you are busy formulating your reply while someone else is speaking, you are only half listening. You're engaged in an internal debate, not genuine connection. Stoic silence involves fully immersing yourself in the act of listening. You hear not only the words being said, but also the tone, the emotion, and the meaning behind them. This allows you to respond not to your own assumptions or projections, but to the actual reality of what was communicated. It transforms conversations from battles to be won into opportunities for mutual understanding. Think about a disagreement with a partner or a close friend. The pattern often involves interrupting, talking over each other, and becoming more focused on proving your point than on understanding theirs. Applying Stoic silence here would mean consciously deciding to let them speak completely, without interruption, even if you passionately disagree. You listen not to find flaws in their argument, but to truly comprehend their perspective. This act alone of feeling fully heard can often de-escalate the entire situation. Your subsequent response, when you do choose to speak, will be infinitely more thoughtful, compassionate, and effective because it emerged from a place of deep listening rather than shallow reacting. Today, see if you can find one single conversation to approach with this powerful tool of intentional silence. It doesn't have to be a conflict. It could be a chat with a coworker, a call with a family member, or even just ordering coffee. Make a conscious decision to listen more than you speak. When you feel the urge to interject with your own story or advice, pause and let it pass. When you are tempted to give a quick, clever retort, simply offer a smile instead. Observe what happens within you. Do you feel a sense of calm control? Observe what happens in the conversation. Does the other person open up more when they feel truly heard? This practice of restraining the tongue is not about suppressing your voice. It is about choosing its moments with wisdom and power, ensuring that when you do speak, your words carry weight, integrity, and purpose. Gratitude isn't just polite, it's a profound source of Stoic power. In a philosophy often associated with enduring hardship, this might seem surprising. But the Stoics understood that gratitude is not a passive feeling of thankfulness. It is an active discipline for recentering your mind on what truly matters, effectively immunizing yourself against the endless craving for more that defines so much of modern life. It is the deliberate practice of shifting your focus from what you lack to what you already possess, and in doing so, you build a fortress of inner contentment that external circumstances cannot easily breach. This practice directly attacks the root of much of our anxiety and dissatisfaction, the belief that our happiness is contingent on acquiring something we don't yet have, whether it's a possession, a status, or a particular outcome. Marcus Aurelius, despite his immense power and wealth, continually practiced this mental shift. In his meditations, he wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." He wasn't offering a fluffy, feel-good tip. He was engaging in a crucial psychological exercise by starting his day by mentally cataloging the most fundamental gifts that are so easy to take for granted, like the ability to see, to walk, to think clearly. He was strengthening his mental baseline. He was building a foundation of appreciation that made the inevitable frustrations and setbacks of his day feel smaller in comparison. This daily ritual of gratitude is like weight training for your resilience. It makes you emotionally stronger and less susceptible to the pulls of envy, disappointment, and desire. The practical application of this is beautifully simple and incredibly effective. One of the most powerful Stoic exercises is to keep a gratitude journal. This isn't about listing the big, obvious wins like a promotion or a new car. The real power lies in appreciating the small, everyday marvels that we normally overlook. The warmth of the sun on your skin during a walk, the taste of a perfectly brewed cup of coffee, the comfort of a safe, warm bed at the end of a long day. The sound of laughter from someone you love. When you make a habit of writing down 3 to 5 of these small blessings each evening, you are actively reprogramming your brain. You are training your attention to scan for good rather than for lack. You are building a vast reservoir of positive evidence that your life is already rich, making you less vulnerable to the idea that you need some external thing to be complete. This practice becomes a shield against the need for external validation. When your sense of worth is tied to likes, shares, promotions, or compliments, you hand over your emotional well-being to forces entirely outside your control. A Stoic gratitude practice reclaims that power. The joy and validation come from within, from your own capacity to notice and appreciate the abundance that already exists in your life. It's a quiet, personal revolution against the culture of more. You begin to realize that you are the source of your own contentment, and that realization is one of the most liberating and strengthening insights you can have. It allows you to engage with the world from a place of fullness, not lack, which in turn makes you more generous, more patient, and far more resilient. Take a moment right now to try this. Think of 3 things you easily take for granted but are genuinely grateful for. They don't have to be profound. It could be the reliable function of your body, the roof over your head, or even the device you're using to watch this video. Sit with the feeling of appreciation for each one. Notice how this simple act shifts your energy and perspective, even slightly. This isn't about ignoring life's real challenges. It's about ensuring those challenges don't blind you to the good that remains. By regularly cultivating this attitude of gratitude, you are not being naive about the world's difficulties. You are being strategic about fortifying your mind against them. Everything changes. Stoicism teaches us to find strength in that reality. This isn't a pessimistic observation, but a liberating truth that forms the bedrock of profound inner resilience. The Stoics didn't see the transient nature of the world as a cause for despair. They saw it as the ultimate call to focus our energy on what is truly within our control, our character, our virtues, and our responses. They practiced a powerful exercise known as memento mori, a Latin phrase that translates to "remember you must die." Far from being a morbid fixation, this was a vital tool for creating urgency, clarity, and immense gratitude for the present moment. By consciously keeping the impermanence of all things at the forefront of their minds, they were able to cut through the noise of trivial concerns and align their actions with their deepest values. It's the philosophical equivalent of a deadline. Knowing that time is limited forces you to prioritize what is genuinely important. Seneca, in his letters, captured the essence of this practice with piercing clarity. He wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." He was pointing to our shared human tendency to live as if we have an endless amount of time, postponing our virtues and our happiness to some vague future date, while simultaneously fearing loss as if we were meant to live forever. This disconnect is the source of so much of our anxiety. The practice of accepting impermanence is about bringing those two things into alignment, living with the conscious awareness of our mortality, so that we can fully appreciate the beauty of the present and stop clinging so tightly to things that were never ours to keep. It teaches us to hold everything loosely, our possessions, our roles, even our relationships, with gratitude but without desperate attachment, because we understand that their presence in our lives is a temporary gift. We can see how this ancient wisdom directly applies to our modern anxieties. Consider the deep fear many people have about job security. In a rapidly changing economy, the idea of a job for life has vanished. This uncertainty can generate tremendous stress, leading us to cling to a specific title or company for our sense of identity and worth. The Stoic, practicing memento mori, would approach this differently. They would acknowledge, this job, this company, this career path, it is not permanent. It could change or end through no fault of my own. This acceptance isn't about becoming complacent, it's about becoming free. It allows you to do your best work without tying your entire self-worth to the outcome. It encourages you to diversify your sense of identity, to find value in your skills, your character, and your relationships outside of work. The anxiety about losing the job loses its power because you have already made peace with its inherent impermanence. The same principle applies to our personal relationships. The desire to keep everything and everyone exactly as they are is a recipe for suffering, because change is the only constant. People grow, circumstances shift, and loved ones eventually pass away. The Stoic approach doesn't mean loving any less. It means loving more wisely. It means appreciating the people in your life fiercely and fully in this present moment, precisely because you know your time with them is not guaranteed. It means releasing the need to control others or freeze them in a particular role. This acceptance allows for deeper, more authentic connections because they are based on present moment reality, not on a desperate attempt to maintain an illusion of permanence. It transforms your interactions from ones of neediness and fear to ones of genuine appreciation and grace. Take a moment now to turn this philosophy inward. What is one thing you find yourself clinging to with a sense of desperation, as if your happiness depends on it never changing or ending? Perhaps it's a particular vision of how your life should look, a specific possession you fear losing, or a relationship you are trying to control to keep it static. Now gently apply the Stoic practice of accepting impermanence. Imagine loosening your grip just a little, Acknowledge that this thing, like all things, is on loan to you for an undefined period. How does that thought feel? Does it bring a sense of panic, or could it potentially bring a strange sense of peace? The panic comes from resistance. The peace comes from alignment with the true nature of reality. By accepting that everything changes, you are not inviting loss. You are simply stopping the exhausting fight against a truth that was always there. This acceptance is the foundation for a calm that cannot be shaken, because it is a calm that has already made peace with loss and found that what remains, your character, is more than enough. In a world of instant gratification, patience is a revolutionary act. It's a quiet rebellion against the modern expectation that everything should happen quickly, easily, and exactly according to our preferred timeline. But Stoicism teaches us that patience is far more than just passive waiting. It is an active, cultivated form of inner strength. It is the conscious decision to meet life's inevitable delays and frustrations not with irritation, but with grace and composed acceptance. The Stoics viewed every moment of waiting, every encounter with a slow-moving process, and every interaction with a difficult person as a precious training opportunity, a chance to practice the virtue of patience and fortify their inner citadel against the turmoil of frustration. Epictetus, who focused intensely on the practical application of philosophy in daily life, offered clear guidance on this. He advised, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." While this might not seem directly about patience, it captures the fundamental mindset shift. Impatience is a form of grieving for what we do not have yet: the faster service, the completed project, the agreement from a colleague. Patience, in the Stoic sense, is the active choice to rejoice in the present moment instead, to find value and opportunity in the delay itself. It is about enduring life's inevitable frictions with a steady mind, recognizing that our peace is not dependent on external events moving at our desired speed. The Stoic techniques for building this muscle are profoundly practical. They involve a deliberate reframing of the situations that typically trigger our impatience. That long line at the grocery store is no longer a thief of your valuable time. It is a chance to practice stillness, to observe your surroundings, to take 3 deep breaths, and to exercise your ability to remain calm amidst a circumstance you cannot control. The colleague who is painstakingly slow to grasp a new concept is not an obstacle to your productivity. They are a mirror reflecting your own capacity for compassion and a test of your ability to communicate with clarity and calm. Even something as mundane as a traffic jam transforms from a stressful delay into a built-in period of reflection, a forced pause in your day that you can choose to use for contemplation rather than agitation. This week, turn your attention inward to identify your own personal impatience trigger. Is it the slow-loading web page that makes your jaw clench? The person in front of you who can't decide on their coffee order? The repetitive questions from a family member? Pinpoint one specific, recurring situation where you feel that familiar heat of frustration begin to rise. Now go beyond just identifying it. Craft a Stoic response plan. Decide in advance that the next time this happens, you will not react. Instead, you will pause. You will take that moment to silently acknowledge the trigger, accept that you cannot change the pace of the event, and consciously redirect your focus to your breath or to a simple observation of your immediate environment. This small, premeditated act of resistance against your own impulsiveness is where true patience is born. It is not about suppressing feeling, but about choosing a more powerful, more graceful response. Each time you succeed, you are not just getting through a moment of waiting. You are actively building a deeper, more resilient kind of strength that will serve you in far greater challenges than any traffic jam could ever provide. How often do you honestly assess your own actions and motives? This simple, probing question lies at the heart of one of the most transformative Stoic practices, the daily discipline of self-examination. While the Stoics cultivated strength through presence and resilience, they understood that growth is impossible without honest reflection. You cannot correct a course you are not tracking. This is why philosophers like Seneca placed such immense value on the practice of looking inward at the end of each day, not with harsh self-judgment, but with the calm, objective eye of a scientist reviewing data. Seneca himself wrote, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, aware of this habit that's now mine, I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by." This nightly review, or what the Greeks called hypomnemata, was not a passive replay of events. It was an active, systematic audit of the soul, designed to identify where one had strayed from virtue and to reinforce where one had acted with wisdom and courage. The Stoic evening review is a structured conversation with oneself, a methodical process of sifting through the day's events to extract valuable lessons. It typically involves asking a series of specific, powerful questions. Where did I allow myself to be governed by external events today instead of my own principles? Was there a moment where I acted out of anger, fear, or vanity rather than reason? Did I fulfill my duties with integrity? Did I contribute something of value to the common good? Crucially, it also involves recognizing what went well. When did I practice patience? When did I choose kindness over being right? This balanced approach prevents the practice from devolving into destructive self-criticism and instead frames it as a continuous learning loop. The goal is not to achieve a perfect, error-free day. That is an impossible standard that would only lead to frustration. The goal is progressive improvement, the gradual sanding away of rough edges, and the steady strengthening of virtuous habits through conscious awareness. You can apply this ancient practice to the most modern of settings with profound effect. Consider a tense interaction you had with a coworker during a project meeting. In the moment, you might have felt defensive and reacted with a sharp tone. The typical, unconscious response is to simply forget about it or perhaps to stew in resentment. The Stoic review that evening would approach it differently. You would calmly revisit the exchange. You might ask, what was the trigger for my defensive reaction? Was my colleague's feedback actually valid? And did my ego prevent me from seeing it? Did my response align with my value of seeking wisdom, or did it come from a place of wanting to protect my self-image? Having identified the misstep, the next step is to plan for the future. A rational, virtuous response might have been to thank them for the feedback, ask clarifying questions, and promise to consider their points. By mentally rehearsing this better response, you are wiring your brain to handle a similar situation with more grace and wisdom next time. The same process applies at home. Perhaps you snapped at a family member after a long day. The review isn't about guilt. It's about understanding that your stress is not their fault and planning to take a few moments of quiet to decompress before engaging next time. This practice transforms your life into your own personal philosophy classroom, where every single day provides the curriculum. The setbacks, the irritations, the minor failures, they all become invaluable data points for your development. It cultivates a powerful sense of personal accountability, where you stop blaming external circumstances for your reactions and start taking ownership of your inner world. This is where invisible strength is forged, in the quiet, honest moments where you acknowledge your own humanity, your mistakes, and your unwavering commitment to do slightly better tomorrow. The beauty of this exercise is its simplicity and its immediate accessibility. You don't need any special tools or training. You only need a few minutes of quiet honesty before you sleep. Why not make this coming week an experiment in Stoic self-examination? Set aside just 5 minutes each night. Find a quiet space, perhaps with a notebook, and ask yourself Seneca's questions. What did I do well today? Where did I fall short of my own standards? What specific lesson can I carry into tomorrow? Do this without drama or self-flagellation. Approach it as a gentle, curious coach would. You might be surprised at the clarity and calm it brings, turning the end of each day into a stepping stone toward a stronger, more grounded, and more virtuous version of yourself. In silence, we often find the loudest truths about ourselves. This seeming paradox lies at the heart of the Stoic embrace of solitude. In a world saturated with noise, opinions, and constant demands on our attention, the deliberate act of stepping away is not an act of antisocial withdrawal, but a profound strategy for reclaiming your mental sovereignty. The Stoics understood that it is nearly impossible to hear your own inner voice, to know your own character and values when you are perpetually immersed in the chorus of everyone else's. Purposeful solitude is the practice of creating a sacred space, free from external input, where you can reconnect with your own thoughts, examine your judgments, and strengthen your capacity for independent thinking. It is in these quiet moments that you recalibrate your moral compass, ensuring it points to your true north and not to the magnetic pull of popular opinion or social expectation. Marcus Aurelius, despite bearing the immense weight of leading an empire, was a fierce advocate for this inward retreat. He wrote in his Meditations, "People seek retreats for themselves in the country, by the sea, or in the mountains, but this is altogether unphilosophical, when you may at any hour retreat into yourself." For the Stoic emperor, the most valuable retreat wasn't a physical location, it was a state of mind. It was the ability to detach from the chaos of the external world and descend into the quiet, orderly citadel of one's own consciousness. This inner retreat is where you can truly assess your actions, question your desires, and fortify your resolutions without the distorting influence of outside praise or criticism. It is the ultimate practice of the dichotomy of control, a temporary disconnection from what you cannot command in order to take full command of the one thing you can yourself. You don't need a remote cabin to practice this. The modern equivalent of the Stoic retreat can be found in simple, accessible daily rituals. A solitary walk without headphones or a phone is a powerful form of moving meditation. As you walk, instead of consuming a podcast or music, turn your attention inward. Observe the rhythm of your breath, the sensation of your feet on the ground, and the flow of your own uninterrupted thoughts. This isn't about achieving a blank mind. It's about observing the quality and content of your mental chatter without judgment. Another potent practice is sitting in silent meditation for just 10 minutes each morning. This isn't about esoteric spirituality, it's practical mental training. You are practicing the act of being alone with yourself, watching your impulses and reactions arise and pass away, and in doing so, you become less of a slave to them. Even mundane activities, like drinking your morning coffee in silence before the rest of the household awakens, or sitting in a park during your lunch break, simply watching the world go by, can become these micro-retreats. The key is intentionality, making a conscious choice to be alone with your own mind for a set period, not as a punishment, but as a nourishing dialogue with the most important person you will ever know, yourself. This week, challenge the modern taboo against being alone with your thoughts. See if you can consciously schedule 3 short periods of purposeful solitude. It could be 20 minutes in a quiet room, a phone-free walk around your neighborhood, or even just sitting in your car for 5 minutes after arriving home before you walk inside. In this time, resist the urge to distract yourself. Let the silence be. You might be surprised at what surfaces a lingering anxiety you've been avoiding, a creative idea that's been waiting for space to emerge, or simply a deep sense of calm you didn't realize you were missing. This practice is not about isolation, it is about integration. It is about regularly checking in with the core of who you are, so that when you step back into the noisy world of people and responsibilities, you do so from a place of centered clarity and unshakable inner strength. True strength often looks like humility, not pride. In a culture that frequently equates confidence with loud self-assertion, the Stoic virtue of humility stands as a quiet but formidable form of power. This isn't about self-deprecation or thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less. It is the rational understanding of your own small but significant place in the vast, interconnected universe, a perspective that instantly deflates the ego and liberates you from the exhausting need to be right, to be seen, and to be superior. Stoic humility is the practice of grounding your sense of worth not in being better than others, but in the continual, honest work of becoming better than you were yesterday. It is the soil in which all other virtues grow, because it first requires the honest admission that you have room to grow. Epictetus, a philosopher who valued clear-eyed self-assessment above all, offered a piercing insight into the folly of pride. He said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." This simple statement cuts to the heart of the matter. The person who is certain of their own superiority, who believes they have nothing left to learn, has effectively built a prison for their own mind. They shut themselves off from new information, from constructive feedback, and from the wisdom of others. Their world becomes small and fragile, constantly needing to be defended against any perceived slight or challenge. In contrast, the humble person, by acknowledging the limits of their own knowledge and understanding, remains perpetually open and curious. They are a lifelong student of life, and in that openness lies a boundless capacity for growth, resilience, and genuine strength. Their inner world is not fragile because it is not built on the shaky foundation of their own infallibility. We can see this dynamic play out in the most practical areas of our daily lives. Consider the all-too-common workplace scenario of receiving constructive criticism. The proud, ego-driven reaction is to become defensive. The feedback is perceived as a personal attack, a threat to one's carefully constructed self-image as a competent professional. This defensiveness might manifest as making excuses, blaming others, or outright rejecting the feedback. This reaction burns bridges, halts progress, and ultimately reveals a deep insecurity. The Stoic, practicing humility, would take a completely different approach. They would listen intently, separating the emotional delivery from the potential truth within the message. They would ask themselves, is there something valuable here for me to learn? Could this perspective help me improve? Even if the feedback is delivered poorly, the humble person can extract the useful kernel of truth without needing to win the argument or protect their ego. They can simply say, "Thank you for that perspective. I will give it some serious thought." This response demonstrates not weakness, but immense security and strength. It shows that their self-worth is rooted in their capacity to learn and grow, not in a perfect external record. Another powerful example is the simple act of admitting a mistake. For the proud person, admitting they are wrong feels like a catastrophic loss of face. It triggers a deep sense of shame, so they might double down on a flawed decision, hide errors, or twist the narrative to avoid responsibility. This is an incredibly draining and fragile way to live. The humble Stoic, understanding that error is an inherent part of the human experience, sees admitting a mistake as an act of integrity and courage. It's a statement of confidence. I am secure enough in who I am to acknowledge when I am wrong. My value is not diminished by my errors. My character is strengthened by my honesty in addressing them. This approach instantly disarms conflict, builds immense trust with others, and transforms a moment of potential failure into an opportunity for collective problem solving and personal growth. Now turn this lens on your own past. Can you recall a specific time when your pride, your need to be right or to save face, led to a negative outcome? Perhaps it was a disagreement with a partner where you refused to back down, prolonging an argument unnecessarily. Maybe it was a project at work where you didn't ask for help because you didn't want to appear incapable, leading to a poorer result. Or perhaps it was a time you dismissed good advice because it came from someone you considered beneath you. Replay that moment in your mind. Now, imagine how it might have unfolded differently if you had approached it with stoic humility. What if you had genuinely listened instead of preparing your defense? What if you had said, "You know what, I think you're right," or "I need help with this"? Feel the sense of relief that comes with that release of ego, the connection it could have fostered, and the better result it might have achieved. That feeling of relief is not a loss of power. It is the discovery of a much deeper, more stable, and more authentic kind of strength. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it with reason as your guide. This stoic refrain transforms courage from a mysterious, innate quality possessed by a special few into a practical discipline that anyone can cultivate. The Stoics didn't believe that brave people were simply born without fear. They believed that brave people had simply learned how to have a different relationship with their fear. They developed a method for sitting down with their anxieties, interrogating them under the bright light of logic, and then choosing a course of action aligned with virtue, regardless of the trembling in their hands or the racing of their heart. This process of rational fear management is how ordinary people do extraordinary things, not because they feel no fear, but because they refuse to let that feeling be the final authority on their actions. Seneca, who wrote extensively on the turbulence of human emotions, saw bravery as the highest expression of wisdom. He argued, sometimes even to live is an act of courage. This profound statement acknowledges that mere endurance in the face of life's hardships requires a form of bravery, but he goes further, defining this courage not as a blind charge into danger, but as a calculated, rational choice. For Seneca, the truly brave person is the one who can look at a difficult situation, understand what is at stake, assess what is within their control, and then proceed with a clear mind and a steady heart. The wisdom lies in knowing what is worth facing and what is worth walking away from, and the bravery is in the execution of that knowledge. It is the marriage of clear thinking and decisive action. The Stoic approach to any fear, whether it's a major life change or a minor social anxiety, follows a consistent two-step process of rational analysis. First, you must clearly define the fear. What exactly are you afraid of? Most fears are vague, shadowy monsters lurking in the corners of our minds. The Stoic practice is to turn on the light and look at the monster directly. If you're afraid of public speaking, is it a fear of forgetting your words? A fear of being judged, a fear of visible nervousness like shaking hands? You must name it with precision. The second step is to apply the dichotomy of control. Of the specific things you just named, which are within your control and which are not, you cannot control the thoughts or judgments of your audience. That goes in the outside my control column. You can, however, control how prepared you are. You can control practicing your speech relentlessly. You can control focusing on the value of the message you're delivering rather than on yourself. This analysis doesn't make the fear vanish, but it drastically reduces its size. It shrinks the problem from a terrifying, overwhelming blob into a series of manageable, concrete items, most of which you can do something about. Your energy then shifts from worrying about the uncontrollable to taking command of the controllable. Consider the universal fear of having a difficult conversation, perhaps asking for a raise or confronting a friend about a hurtful action. The amorphous fear of this conversation can be paralyzing, leading us to postpone it indefinitely, which often makes the underlying problem worse. Applying the Stoic method, you would start by defining the fear. Are you afraid of being rejected? Are you afraid of causing conflict or damaging the relationship? Are you afraid you won't articulate your points well? Next, sort these fears using the dichotomy of control. You cannot control the other person's reaction, whether they get angry, say no, or become defensive. That is their domain. What you can control is your own preparation, crafting your points clearly and compassionately, choosing an appropriate time and place, and managing your own emotions during the discussion. You can control acting with integrity and courage, regardless of the outcome. This shift is empowering. The goal of the conversation is no longer to guarantee a specific result which is outside your control, but to honor your own values by speaking your truth with courage and respect, which is entirely within your control. This reframing doesn't eliminate the nervous butterflies, but it gives you a powerful reason to move forward in spite of them. This month, turn this philosophy into a practical experiment in building your courage. Identify one fear that has been holding you back, something that feels manageable yet significant. It doesn't have to be a life-altering event. It could be the fear of speaking up in a meeting, the fear of signing up for a class, or the fear of initiating a socially awkward but necessary apology. Once you've identified it, take out a piece of paper or open a notes app and perform the Stoic analysis. Write down the specific fear, then draw a line down the center of the page. On one side, list every aspect of this situation that is within your control. On the other, list everything that is not. Finally, make a deliberate plan to focus all your energy and attention solely on the within my control column. Prepare, practice, and plan your virtuous action. By doing this, you are not trying to magically erase your fear. You are choosing to put your trust in something more reliable than a fleeting emotion, your own capacity for reasoned action, and your commitment to living with courage, one rational step at a time. Your greatest power often lies in what you don't do or say. This is the essence of Stoic non-reactivity, a conscious, disciplined pause between the external event that triggers you and your internal or external response. It's not about becoming passive or disengaged. It's about creating a moment of choice, a sacred space where you reclaim authorship of your actions from your automatic impulses. The world will constantly provide stimuli designed to provoke you: a critical comment, a frustrating delay, a personal insult. Your strength is measured not by whether you feel that initial spark of reaction, but by what you choose to do with that spark. Do you let it ignite into a wildfire of emotion, or do you contain it, examine it, and decide if it's even worthy of your energy? This gap, however brief, is where your freedom resides. Epictetus, who understood power dynamics from his time in slavery, gave us the foundational principle for this practice. Remember, it is not he who gives abuse or blows who affronts, but the view we take of these things as insulting. Therefore, when someone provokes you, it is your own opinion which is provoking you. His insight is revolutionary. He's saying that the harm we feel from others' actions is not inherent in the actions themselves. It is a product of our own judgment, our own assent to the idea that we have been harmed. By withholding that immediate assent, by not instantly internalizing the provocation, we build an inner buffer that protects our peace. The other person's action is theirs, your reaction is yours, and yours alone to command. This practice transforms everyday conflicts from emotional battles into exercises in composed mastery. Consider the modern arena of online interaction. An anonymous troll leaves a vicious comment on a post you shared, something designed purely to elicit anger. The impulsive reaction is to fire back a cutting reply, to try to win the argument or shame the attacker. This is exactly what the troll wants: your energy, your attention, your descent to their level. The Stoic, practicing non-reactivity, simply observes the comment as one might observe a weather pattern. They apply Epictetus's lesson: this comment only has the power to harm me if I grant it that power. They might choose to delete it, ignore it, or even laugh at its absurdity, all without a single ripple disturbing their inner calm. The power is in the choice not to play the game. The same principle applies in a face-to-face, heated debate. When someone raises their voice or makes a personal attack, our primal instinct is to match their intensity, to defend and counterattack. This almost always escalates the conflict and ensures that no real communication occurs. The non-reactive approach is to become the calm center of the storm. Instead of raising your own voice, you might deliberately soften it. Instead of interrupting, you listen completely. You might even say, "I want to understand your point, but it's hard for me to do that when voices are raised." This response is not weak, it is incredibly powerful. It de-escalates the situation, models emotional control, and often disarms the other person completely because you have refused to respond to their emotional cue. You are leading the interaction rather than being led by it. This week, give yourself the gift of that pause. Choose one specific trigger you encounter regularly, perhaps the tone of an email, the behavior of another driver, or an interruption when you're speaking. Make a premeditated decision that the next time this trigger occurs, you will not react immediately. You will create your gap. A simple and profoundly effective way to do this is to practice the 3-breath rule. When you feel that familiar surge of irritation or anger, stop everything. Close your mouth if you were about to speak. Put your hands down if you were typing a reply. Then take 3 slow, deliberate breaths. Focus only on the sensation of the air moving in and out of your body. In the space of those 3 breaths, the initial heat of the emotion will often subside just enough for your wiser, rational mind to step in and choose a response that aligns with your character, not your impulse. Each time you succeed, you are not just avoiding a momentary conflict. You are strengthening a neural pathway of calm, building a default setting of composed strength that will serve you in moments far greater than any online comment or traffic jam. How does caring for others actually make you stronger? It seems counterintuitive in a world that often prizes individualism and personal achievement above all else. Yet Stoicism presents a profound paradox, that our deepest inner fortitude is not forged in isolation, but through our connections to others and our commitment to the roles we play in the larger human community. The Stoics had a beautiful term for this, oikaiosis, which translates roughly to appropriation or familiarization. It describes the natural process by which we come to recognize that we are not isolated islands, but part of a vast, interconnected continent of humanity. Our circle of concern naturally expands from ourselves to our family, to our local community, and ultimately to all rational beings. This isn't presented as a moral obligation to feel guilty about, but as a source of immense, untapped power. When you see your well-being as intertwined with the well-being of others, your own resilience multiplies. Your purpose is no longer a fragile, self-contained thing that can be shattered by personal misfortune. It is reinforced by the lives you touch and the service you provide. Your strength becomes a resource not just for you, but for your entire web of relationships, and in giving it away, you find it returns to you multiplied. Marcus Aurelius, who bore the incredible weight of leading the Roman Empire, constantly reminded himself of this duty to the whole. He wrote, What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee. This simple, powerful metaphor captures the essence of Stoic social philosophy. The bee cannot thrive if the hive is sick or failing. Similarly, our own fulfillment and inner strength are inextricably linked to the health and well-being of our communities. For Aurelius, this wasn't an abstract idea. It was the daily motivation behind his immense responsibilities. Every decision, every judgment, every act of leadership was an opportunity to benefit the hive. This perspective transforms duty from a burdensome chore into a meaningful practice that grounds and empowers us. It provides an unwavering why that makes the how of life's difficulties much easier to bear. Your work is no longer just a job, it's your contribution. Your family responsibilities are no longer just tasks, they are expressions of your love and commitment. This reframe infuses even the most mundane actions with a sense of higher purpose, which is a cornerstone of lasting resilience. This philosophy finds its strength in the most practical, everyday contexts. Consider the act of volunteering your time at a local shelter or community garden. On the surface, you are giving your energy without any immediate, tangible return. But from a Stoic perspective, you are engaging in a powerful exercise that builds inner fortitude. You are practicing compassion, exercising patience, and connecting with people from different walks of life. You are physically manifesting the principle of oikeiosis, widening your circle of concern. This act reinforces the truth that you have something valuable to offer, that you are a needed part of a larger whole. This sense of belonging and purpose is a direct antidote to feelings of isolation and meaninglessness, which are among the greatest drains on our inner strength. In a professional setting, this might look like acting with unwavering fairness, even when you could easily exploit a situation for personal gain. Choosing integrity over a shortcut might seem like a weakness in a competitive world, but the Stoic knows it is a long-term investment in their own character and in the health of their professional ecosystem. That choice builds self-respect and trust, which are currencies of a different, more enduring kind of power. The same principle applies within the family unit. Supporting an aging parent or guiding a young child requires immense patience and self-sacrifice. There will be days when it feels draining, but the Stoic approach is to see this not as a drain on your strength, but as the very activity that builds it. Each act of patience is a repetition in the gym of your character. Each moment of selfless care strengthens your capacity for love and endurance. By fulfilling these roles with integrity, you are not diminishing yourself. You are building a legacy of strength that sustains not only you but also those around you. Your quiet consistency becomes a rock for others, and in being that rock, you discover just how unshakable you can be. This week, take a quiet moment to look at your own circles, your family, your workplace, your neighborhood. Identify one small, specific way you can strengthen that community through a simple, quiet action. It doesn't need to be grand. It could be mentoring a new colleague, checking in on an elderly neighbor, or simply listening to a friend without offering advice. In that conscious act of contributing to the hive, take note of the subtle but real sense of empowerment it brings. You are not just giving, you are forging your own character and discovering that true power is always ultimately shared. In a world obsessed with more, Stoicism teaches the strength of enough. This isn't a philosophy of deprivation or a call to a life of barren austerity. It is a profound recalibration of what we believe we need to be happy and secure. The Stoics identified a fundamental truth: our desires are like a leaky bucket. The more we pour into them, the more they demand, creating a perpetual state of wanting that keeps us forever dependent on external things for our inner peace. True power, they argued, comes not from accumulating an endless supply of water, but from patching the holes in the bucket itself. By consciously practicing contentment with less, we are not settling for a smaller life. We are building a life with vastly larger margins of freedom, resilience, and independence. We are systematically reducing the number of things that fortune can take from us, and in doing so, we become less vulnerable to its whims. Seneca, a man who experienced both extreme wealth and forced exile, captured this idea with piercing clarity. He wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." This single sentence dismantles our entire modern conception of wealth. Wealth, in the Stoic sense, has nothing to do with the number in your bank account and everything to do with the state of your desires. A billionaire who is perpetually anxious about losing his money or obsessed with making more is, by this definition, profoundly poor. A person with modest means who has learned to want little and appreciate much possesses a form of riches that no market crash can ever touch. This shift from acquisition to appreciation is the very heart of Stoic contentment. It is the practice of finding abundance in what you already have, rather than perceiving lack in what you do not. This ancient wisdom finds incredibly relevant application in our modern world of hyper-consumerism and digital overload. One of the most direct ways to practice this is through a thoughtful evaluation of our physical possessions. We live surrounded by objects we rarely use, clothes we never wear, and gadgets that promised happiness but now just collect dust. The act of downsizing, of consciously deciding what is truly essential and letting go of the rest, is a powerful physical metaphor for this internal Stoic practice. It's not about living with nothing. It's about curating a life filled only with things that serve a purpose or bring genuine joy, freeing up mental and physical space from the burden of managing excess. Each item you choose to keep or release becomes a small vote for intentionality over impulsivity, for clarity over clutter. Another potent modern arena for this practice is our relationship with technology and screen time. Our devices are engineered to cultivate desire for the next notification, the next piece of news, the next purchase, the next dose of social validation. This constant, low-grade stimulation keeps us in a state of perpetual want, subtly reinforcing the idea that we are lacking something that the next click might provide. The Stoic practice of wanting less can be applied here by consciously reducing screen time. This isn't about rejecting technology outright, but about reclaiming your attention from algorithms designed to hijack it. Choosing to read a physical book instead of scrolling, having a meal without a phone on the table, or designating tech-free hours in your evening are all acts of Stoic minimalism. They are declarations that your peace and focus are more valuable than any potential distraction vying for your attention. Ultimately, this journey leads us to prioritize experiences over things. A desire for experiences is far more resilient than a desire for possessions. A cherished memory of a hike with a friend, the skill acquired from a cooking class, the deep connection forged in a long conversation. These are forms of wealth that cannot be broken, lost, or taken away. They are internal possessions, and they grow richer with time. The Stoic finds power in this shift, investing their energy in building a rich inner world and collecting meaningful moments rather than amassing external objects that ultimately own just as much of them. This week, turn a critical yet compassionate eye to your own life. Identify one specific area where the desire for more has a subtle hold on you. Is it the compulsion to check your phone first thing in the morning? The feeling that you need new clothes for an upcoming event even though your closet is full. The belief that a newer car would significantly increase your happiness. Choose just one. Your challenge is not to eradicate the desire instantly, but to simply observe it without immediately giving in. See if you can sit with the feeling of wanting and discover the freedom that lies just on the other side of it, the quiet, empowering realization that you are already enough and you already have enough. Multitasking divides your energy, single tasking multiplies your presence. This simple yet profound shift in how we approach our daily activities lies at the heart of Stoic mental discipline. In an age that often celebrates the ability to juggle multiple tasks at once as a mark of efficiency, Stoicism offers a counterintuitive but far more powerful path: the practice of giving your complete and undivided attention to the one thing directly in front of you. This isn't about getting more done in less time. It's about bringing the full weight of your being to each moment, thereby transforming the quality of your engagement with the world and, in turn, the quality of your inner life. The Stoics understood that a scattered mind is a weak mind, perpetually reacting to the latest distraction and never fully inhabiting its own actions. A focused mind, in contrast, is a fortress of calm and effectiveness. Marcus Aurelius constantly reinforced this principle in his private meditations, urging himself to do every act of your life as if it were your last act. This is perhaps the ultimate argument for single tasking. If you truly believed this moment, this task, was the final action of your life, how much more care and attention would you pour into it? You wouldn't be glancing at your phone, thinking about your next meeting or planning your dinner. You would be completely and utterly present. For the Stoics, this wasn't a morbid thought experiment. It was a practical tool for cultivating what they called prasarch, or attention. It was the practice of treating every action, no matter how small, as a sacred opportunity to exercise virtue and presence. By doing one thing at a time with your whole mind, you are not just completing a task, you are performing a ritual of focus that strengthens your mental resolve and deepens your connection to the present. The practical application of this is a quiet rebellion against the fragmented nature of modern work and life. Consider your typical work project. The common approach is to have multiple browser tabs open, your email notifications pinging, your phone buzzing with messages, and your mind leaping between the report you're writing, the meeting you just had, and the one you're about to join. This constant context switching is mentally exhausting and dramatically reduces the depth and quality of your work. The Stoic single tasking method would be to close everything unrelated to that one report. Silence your notifications, set a timer for 45 minutes, and pour every ounce of your cognitive energy into that single document. When your mind inevitably wanders, gently guide it back as if you were training a muscle. You will find that not only is the final product of higher quality, but the process itself is far less stressful. You are fully immersed, and in that immersion lies a unique form of calm. This practice extends far beyond professional work into the very fabric of our social interactions. How often are you in a conversation with someone while simultaneously composing a text message or thinking about your response instead of truly listening? Stoic single tasking in this context means offering someone the rare and invaluable gift of your complete attention. Put your phone away, make eye contact. Listen to understand, not just to reply. Notice their body language, the tone of their voice, the meaning behind their words. This level of presence is a profound act of respect, both for the other person and for your own capacity for connection. It transforms mundane chatter into genuine engagement and ensures that your time with others is spent actually with them, not just near them. Even the most routine chores can be transformed into exercises in Stoic focus. Washing the dishes is no longer a boring task to rush through while listening to a podcast. It becomes an opportunity to feel the warmth of the water, to see the shine of the clean glass, to move with deliberate care. Folding laundry becomes a practice in bringing order and mindfulness to a simple act. By applying full attention to these activities, you are not just getting them done, You are using them as a training ground for your mind, teaching it to stay present and engaged regardless of the task's perceived importance. This builds a resilient, calm focus that will serve you in every area of your life. Today, choose one single activity, just one, to approach with this level of stoic, undivided focus. It could be the next meeting you attend, your next meal, your next walk to the car, or even just reading these next few sentences. For the duration of that activity, let it be the only thing in your world. When your attention splinters, as it naturally will, notice it without judgment and gently guide it back. This simple act of reclamation is not about productivity. It is a direct exercise of your inner power, a conscious decision to be the master of your attention rather than its servant. A strong mind often resides in a disciplined body. Stoicism embraces both. This ancient philosophy never saw our physical form as separate from our character, or something to be ignored or indulged without thought. Instead, the Stoics viewed the body as the indispensable vessel for the mind, the practical workshop where virtue is forged and tested daily. They understood a profound truth that modern science now confirms. The state of our physical being directly influences our mental clarity, emotional stability, and overall capacity for resilience. To neglect the body is to ignore a fundamental tool for building the very inner citadel we seek to create. This isn't about achieving a perfect physique or winning athletic competitions. It's about cultivating a body that is a willing and capable partner to a rational mind, one that obeys reason rather than being ruled by fleeting sensations of comfort or discomfort. The Roman Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus, who placed a heavy emphasis on practical living, argued powerfully for this integration. He stated, "How indeed could a body which is not in good condition be strong enough to carry out the orders of a mind which is not in good condition? For the body is, so to speak, the servant and tool of the mind." His insight turns the modern mind over matter cliché on its head. It's not about the mind brutally dominating the body, but about a harmonious partnership where a well-cared-for body becomes a responsive and reliable instrument for the intentions of a well-trained mind. When the body is sluggish, achy, or perpetually seeking indulgence, it constantly sends signals of distress and distraction to the mind, pulling it away from its duties. A body that is disciplined, however, operates with a quiet efficiency, allowing the mind to focus on higher things. This is why the Stoics advocated for physical training not for vanity, but for virtue, to ensure the body was strong enough to endure, resilient enough to persevere, and healthy enough to not be a constant source of distraction. We can integrate this Stoic principle into our modern lives through simple, intentional practices that reinforce this mind-body connection. A consistent morning exercise routine, even a brief 15-minute session, is a classic example. It's not about the intensity of the workout, but about the act of willingly embracing a minor discomfort, the effort of moving when you might rather stay in bed. You are telling your mind and your body that you are in charge of your actions, not your immediate desires. This daily victory, however small, sets a tone of self-mastery for the entire day. Another powerful practice is posture awareness. Throughout your day, especially during moments of stress or concentration, take a second to notice how you are holding your body. Are your shoulders slumped? Is your breath shallow? The simple act of sitting or standing upright, pulling your shoulders back, and taking a deep, deliberate breath is a physical declaration of confidence and composure. It signals to your nervous system that you are not under threat, which in turn calms the mind and allows for clearer thinking. This is physical discipline in its most subtle and immediate form. Even our relationship with food and breath can become a Stoic training ground. Practicing moderate eating, stopping when you are satisfied, not stuffed, or choosing nourishing food over purely pleasurable junk food is a direct exercise in temperance. It's the practice of saying no to a craving simply to prove that you can, to demonstrate that your rational choice holds more authority than your appetite. Similarly, mindful breathing is perhaps the most accessible and potent tool available. When you feel a surge of anger or anxiety, the body reacts first. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense. By consciously taking control of your breath, making it slow and deep, you are using a physical lever to calm the body's alarm system, which then allows the mind to re-engage with reason. You are not just breathing, you are practicing the Stoic art of not being carried away by an initial impression. This week, choose one small, manageable physical discipline to introduce into your daily routine. It doesn't need to be a dramatic overhaul. It could be committing to a 5-minute stretch when you wake up, choosing to take the stairs every day at work, deciding to drink a full glass of water before your morning coffee, or practicing 1 minute of focused, deep breathing before you check your phone. The specific action matters less than the intention behind it. Use it as a daily reminder that your body is your partner in building a resilient life. Each time you follow through on this small commitment, you are not just improving your physical health, you are casting a vote for your own self-discipline, strengthening the neural pathways of willpower, and proving to yourself that you have the capacity to endure small hardships gracefully. This tangible, physical practice makes the abstract ideal of Stoic resilience something you can literally feel and touch, building a foundation of strength that supports every other principle you seek to embody. Holding a grudge is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to get sick. It's a futile act of self-sabotage that the Stoics understood all too well. In their view, forgiveness is not a sign of weakness or a free pass for the person who wronged you. It is a profound act of self-liberation, a strategic choice to reclaim your own energy and preserve your inner peace. When you refuse to forgive, you are essentially chaining yourself to the past, allowing someone else's actions to continue dictating your present emotional state. You become a prisoner of a memory, and the only jailer is you. Stoicism reframes forgiveness as the ultimate rational act, a conscious decision to stop allowing a past event to continue harming you in the present. It is the strength to say, "What happened, happened. I cannot change it, but I can absolutely choose to no longer be its victim." Seneca, who wrote extensively on the corrosive nature of anger, put it with his characteristic bluntness: anger, an acid that can do more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than to anything on which it is poured. This powerful metaphor captures the entire Stoic argument. The anger and resentment you hold onto, that desire for the other person to feel your pain or offer a perfect apology, does not touch them. They are likely completely unaware of the storm raging inside you. The acid of that anger sits in your vessel, eating away at your clarity, your energy, and your capacity for joy. Forgiveness, then, is not about condoning the action, it's about pouring out the acid. It is an act of self-preservation, a declaration that your peace is more valuable than your grievance. Consider a practical, modern example that happens in workplaces every single day. A colleague makes a significant error on a shared project, and their mistake directly undermines your hard work, perhaps even leading to a reprimand from your boss. The immediate, visceral reaction is one of white-hot anger and betrayal. You might spend days replaying the event in your mind, fantasizing about a confrontation, or giving them the cold shoulder. This internal drama consumes an enormous amount of your mental bandwidth. You're distracted in meetings, you lose sleep, and your own work begins to suffer because part of your brain is permanently occupied with this resentment. The Stoic approach would be to engage in a rational cost-benefit analysis of this grudge. Ask yourself, is my anger fixing the mistake? Is it changing the past? Is it improving my present experience or my future outcomes? The answer to all these questions is a clear no. The rational choice, the one that serves your own virtue and peace, is to release it. This doesn't mean you shouldn't address the issue professionally to prevent it from happening again, but it does mean you do so from a place of calm clarity, not seething anger. You can have that necessary conversation, establish better protocols, and then crucially let the emotional charge around the event dissolve. You forgive the human fallibility in your colleague not for their sake, but for your own, so you can reclaim your focus and move forward without the heavy anchor of resentment. This practice extends far deeper into old, lingering hurts from our personal past. Perhaps a family member said something deeply hurtful years ago, or a friend betrayed a confidence. The person may never apologize or may not even remember the incident. The Stoic asks, why are you continuing to pay the emotional price for someone else's long-ago action? By holding onto this resentment, you are granting that person a permanent lease in your mind, allowing them to hurt you over and over again without them lifting a finger. To forgive with a Stoic perspective is to finally serve them an eviction notice. It is a private, internal decision that you are no longer willing to let that memory control you. You accept that the event occurred as a fact of history, you acknowledge the pain it caused, and then you make the conscious, powerful choice to place it in the past where it belongs, freeing up your emotional energy for the people and pursuits that bring you value and joy in the present. Take a quiet moment now to turn this philosophy inward. Bring to mind one specific resentment you have been carrying. It doesn't have to be a monumental betrayal. It could be a recent slight from a neighbor or an old frustration with a partner. Now apply the Stoic lens. Honestly assess what this grudge is costing you. How much mental real estate does it occupy? How does it affect your mood or your energy when it comes to mind? Then consider Seneca's vessel. Visualize that resentment as a corrosive substance inside you that you have the power to simply pour out. You are not being weak by letting it go. You are being incredibly strong. You are choosing your own peace over a prolonged conflict that only exists within you. What would it feel like to finally set that weight down? That feeling of lightness, of reclaimed energy, is the true strength of Stoic forgiveness. Rigid trees break in storms. Flexible ones survive. Stoicism teaches this same mental flexibility as a core component of invisible strength. The philosophy never asks us to become passive leaves blown about by any wind of change. Instead, it calls for a dynamic, resilient adaptability, the ability to bend without breaking, to reassess and recalibrate our approach when circumstances shift, all while holding fast to our inner principles and calm. This is the profound difference between being reactive and being responsive. A reactive person is thrown into turmoil by change, their emotional state directly tied to the stability of their external conditions. A responsive Stoic, however, meets change with a steady mind, assesses the new landscape with clarity, and adapts their actions accordingly, all from a foundation of unwavering virtue. Their power lies not in controlling the world, but in mastering their relationship with its inherent flux. Epictetus, who knew more than most about life's unpredictable turns, offered perhaps the perfect guiding principle for this. He said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." He expands on this with the powerful analogy of a card game, reminding us that our role is not to complain about the cards we are dealt, but to play the hand we have with as much skill and wisdom as we can possibly muster. We cannot control the deal, the sudden job loss, the unexpected illness, the global event that upends our plans, but we retain absolute sovereignty over how we choose to play our cards. Do we fold in despair, throwing the game in frustration? Or do we look carefully at our new resources, strategize, and make our next move with intention and courage? This shift in perspective transforms change from a threat to a challenge, from a source of anxiety to an opportunity to exercise our virtue. We can see this stoic flexibility in action all around us. Consider the modern reality of changing career paths. A few generations ago, it was common to work for a single company for an entire lifetime. That world is gone. Today, industries transform overnight, skills become obsolete, and economic forces can eliminate entire fields. The rigid person who has tied their entire identity to a specific job title or company is devastated by this kind of change. They see it as a personal failure or a profound injustice. The adaptable Stoic, while certainly feeling the sting of disruption, sees it differently. They understand that their core identity is not their job. It is their character, their work ethic, their capacity to learn, and their resilience. They might pivot, retrain for a new field, or even see the layoff as a forced push toward a path they were too afraid to choose themselves. They play the new hand. Another everyday example is the simple, frustrating experience of a meticulously planned day that completely falls apart. Your childcare falls through, a flight gets cancelled, a key meeting is postponed. The rigid response is to spend the day in a state of aggravated frustration, mentally fighting against a reality that cannot be changed, which only compounds the misery. The adaptable Stoic takes a deep breath, accepts the new reality instantly, and asks, "Okay, given this new situation, what is the best use of my time and energy right now?" They redirect their focus to a different productive task, or they simply accept the delay with grace and use the unexpected free time for reading or reflection. They adapt their branches to the storm so they do not snap. Now, bring this principle into your own life. Bring to mind a recent change, large or small, that you found difficult to navigate. It could be something as significant as a move to a new city, or as minor as a sudden change in your daily workout routine due to an injury. Replay your initial reaction. How much of your energy was spent on mentally resisting the change, wishing things were different, or complaining about the unfairness of it all? Now, imagine applying the Stoic mindset of flexible adaptation. What would it have looked like to fully accept the new circumstance the moment it arose, without wasting a single joule of energy on resistance? From that place of acceptance, what creative options might have become visible? How could you have played your hand better? This isn't about hindsight criticism, it's about foresight training. By rehearsing this adaptive response to past events, you are strengthening the mental muscle that will allow you to greet the next unexpected change not with dread, but with a calm, clear, and flexible mind, ready to meet whatever comes with resourcefulness and poise. Where does your deepest satisfaction really come from? If you pause to truly consider this, you might find that your most memorable moments of contentment aren't tied to a purchase you made, a compliment you received, or any external reward. They likely come from those times you acted with quiet integrity, when you did something difficult simply because it was right. The Stoics drilled down into this very human experience and built an entire philosophy of joy around it. They proposed a radical idea that the most reliable and lasting form of happiness isn't something you find or receive, but something you generate from within through the consistent practice of virtue. It's a joy that is entirely your own creation, and because of that, it cannot be taken away by any outside force. This inner joy isn't a fleeting burst of euphoria. It's a deep, warm, and steady current that flows from knowing you are living in alignment with your highest principles. Marcus Aurelius, from the pinnacle of imperial power, constantly reminded himself of this truth. He wrote, "When you have done a good act and another has received it, Why do you look for a third thing besides, like fools, to have the reputation of having done a good act or to get a return? His insight cuts to the heart of the matter. He's pointing out the trap of seeking a secondary reward for our good deeds. The true reward, the genuine joy, is in the act itself. It's in the internal knowledge that you have added a small measure of good to the world, that you have strengthened your own character by choosing courage over comfort or justice over convenience. This joy is self-contained and self-validating. It doesn't require an audience, applause, or a thank you note. It is the private, profound satisfaction of knowing you have lived up to your own ideals, regardless of whether anyone else ever knows about it. We can find countless opportunities to experience this in our daily lives. Imagine anonymously paying for the coffee of the person behind you in the drive-through line. There is no social media post, no recognition, no expectation of reciprocity. The entire transaction exists only in your own mind. Yet, the quiet warmth that spreads through you is a direct experience of Stoic joy. It's the pleasure of having executed a small act of kindness for its own sake. Or consider the more demanding example of taking pride in honest work, even when you could easily cut corners. You're working on a project late at night, and no one would ever know if you skipped a few tedious steps to finish faster. Choosing to do the job thoroughly and correctly, simply because it is the right way to do it, generates a deep sense of self-respect. You leave work tired, but with a clean conscience and the quiet fulfillment that comes from intrinsic excellence. This is the joy of virtue in action. This principle also applies powerfully in our relationships. Choosing to have a difficult but honest conversation with a loved one, not to win an argument but to clear the air and seek understanding, is an act of courage and justice. The outcome might be uncertain and emotionally taxing, but the very act of engaging with integrity, of striving for truth over easy harmony, brings its own unique form of satisfaction. Even if the conversation is challenging, you are left with the unshakable knowledge that you acted with honor and care. That internal reward, that strengthening of your moral fiber, is the Stoic joy that outlasts any temporary discomfort. It's the satisfaction of knowing you showed up as the person you aspire to be, regardless of how the other person responded. Now, take a moment to look back on your own life and find a personal example of this phenomenon. Can you recall a time when you did the right thing, even though it was difficult, inconvenient, or went completely unnoticed? Perhaps you returned a lost wallet with all the cash still inside. Maybe you defended someone who wasn't present to hear the gossip, or it could be as simple as telling the truth in a situation where a little white lie would have been easier. Try to reconnect with the feeling that followed that action. It likely wasn't a loud, celebratory happiness, but a quiet, deep-seated sense of peace and rightness. That feeling is a direct glimpse into the Stoic secret of happiness. It's the proof that your most reliable source of joy isn't out there in the world, waiting to be granted to you. It's right here, in your own capacity to choose virtue, moment by moment, and in the profound fulfillment that choice always brings. Strength isn't always about pushing harder, sometimes it's about wise restraint. This crucial distinction lies at the very heart of Stoic wisdom, separating mere busyness from true effectiveness, and raw force from refined power. The Stoics were not philosophers of passive resignation. They were masters of strategic action, but their genius lay in their method for determining where to direct their energy. They understood that wasting effort on things outside their control was not just inefficient, it was a fundamental violation of their own principles, a draining of precious inner resources that could be better spent on what truly mattered. This is the art of the strategic pause, the strength found in knowing when to move with force and when to stand with patience. Seneca, a man deeply involved in the turbulent politics of imperial Rome, knew this balance intimately. He advised, "There is a time when even to live is an act of courage." But within that statement lies a deeper layer. Sometimes the courageous act is not a dramatic gesture, but the quiet endurance to wait, to persevere, to conserve your strength for a more fitting moment. He expanded on this, noting, "We should take a selective approach to activities, deciding whether they are worth the price of our time and energy, or whether we are better served by passing them by." This is the Stoic calculus in action. Before any decision, the Stoic asks two questions rooted in the dichotomy of control. First, is this situation within my power to change? And second, if it is, would my intervention truly serve virtue and the common good, or is it driven by ego, impulse, or a desire for control? This careful discernment prevents us from becoming the proverbial donkey chasing a carrot on a stick, perpetually striving but never truly effective, exhausting ourselves on a treadmill of futile effort. We can see this principle play out in countless modern scenarios. Imagine a disagreement with a neighbor over a minor property line issue. The initial ego-driven impulse might be to immediately confront them, to assert your rights, to launch into a conflict that could potentially sour the relationship for years. The Stoic, however, would first apply the filter of control. Is your neighbor's attitude or past behavior within your control? Almost certainly not. You cannot force them to be reasonable or see your point of view. What is within your control is your own response, your timing, and your approach. The wise restraint might be to wait, let your initial irritation subside. Gather more information. Perhaps the issue will resolve itself, or a better opportunity for a calm conversation will present itself later. By choosing not to act immediately, you are not being weak, you are being strategic. You are conserving your emotional and social energy for a time when your action has a higher probability of being effective and virtuous. Conversely, consider a situation at work where you see a recurring process that is inefficient and wastes company resources. This is likely within your sphere of influence. You have the ability to analyze the problem, prepare a solution, and present it to your team. The Stoic impulse here would be proactive effort. But even then, the wisdom lies in the how. It's not about storming into your manager's office with a list of complaints. It's about patiently gathering data, building a rational case, and choosing the right moment to present it. The action is deliberate and purposeful, not reactive and frantic. This balanced approach, knowing when to hold back and when to lean in, ensures that your actions are like a well-aimed arrow. They conserve energy until the moment of release, and then they fly true to their target with maximum impact. It transforms your life from a series of knee-jerk reactions into a composed and intentional strategy. Now, bring this critical discernment into your own life. Bring to mind one current situation that is occupying your mental space. It might be a lingering tension with a family member, a decision about changing jobs, or even a personal goal you feel stuck on. Apply the Stoic two-question filter. First, honestly assess, what parts of this situation are truly within my control? Be ruthless in separating your hopes from your actual agency. Second, for the parts you can control, ask, would action right now be the most virtuous and effective use of my energy? Is it driven by a desire for a good outcome, or by impatience, fear, or pride? The answer to these questions will point you clearly toward either purposeful action or purposeful acceptance. This isn't about finding an excuse for inaction. It's about finding the wisdom to ensure that your actions count. By making this discernment a daily practice, you stop fighting against the current of life and start navigating it with the skillful grace of a master sailor, using both the wind and the tides to your advantage. Small daily actions compound into unshakable inner power. This is the beautiful, practical secret at the heart of Stoicism. It's not about grand, sweeping gestures of willpower, but about the quiet, consistent weaving of simple practices into the very fabric of your daily life. These tiny, repeated actions are like drops of water that, over time, can carve canyons of resilience into your character. They build what the Stoics called your inner citadel, not through dramatic upheaval, but through the steady, almost invisible work of turning philosophy from an abstract idea into a lived reality. The goal is to make Stoic resilience your default setting, the automatic way you meet the world, and that only happens through dedicated, daily repetition. Epictetus, who focused relentlessly on the application of philosophy, understood this transformative power of habit perfectly. He taught, "If you would be a good reader, read. If a writer, write. If a philosopher, do the things philosophy prescribes." His point was brilliantly simple. Understanding is not enough. You become what you consistently practice. Reading about courage won't make you brave. Only the repeated act of choosing courage in small moments will. Thinking about patience is useless without the daily exercise of restraining irritation. The power is in the doing, and the doing must be habitual to become effortless. Let's translate this into tangible habits you can start today. One of the most powerful is the morning reflection. Before you even check your phone or get out of bed, take just 3 minutes. In the quiet of the morning, ask yourself 2 simple questions. What potential challenges could I face today, and how can I meet them with virtue? This isn't about pessimistic forecasting, it's a mental rehearsal. You're preparing your mind just as an athlete stretches their muscles before a game. You might anticipate a difficult conversation and resolve to approach it with calm listening. You might foresee a tedious task and decide to tackle it with focused presence. This simple practice sets your intentions for the day, aligning your actions with your values before the world has a chance to pull you in a dozen different directions. Another profoundly effective habit is the implementation of pause prompts throughout your day. In our hyper-connected world, we are constantly reacting. The ping of a notification, the tone of an email, the abrupt demand of a colleague, they all trigger immediate, often unthinking responses. To build your invisible strength, you must create a gap between that stimulus and your reaction. A practical way to do this is to set 2 or 3 random, gentle alarms on your phone throughout the day. Don't label them with a task. Let the label simply be a question mark. When the alarm goes off, it is your signal to pause for just 15 seconds. In that moment, take 1 deep breath and ask yourself, right now, am I acting by choice or am I reacting on impulse? This tiny, consistent interruption of your autopilot is like a mindfulness reset button. It trains your brain to habitually insert that crucial moment of choice, which is the very foundation of Stoic response. You can also weave Stoicism into your existing routines. Your daily commute or walk is a perfect opportunity. Instead of listening to the news or a podcast, use that time for a focused review of the Dichotomy of Control. As you see events unfold around you, the traffic, the weather, the behavior of other people, mentally categorize them. Not in my control, not in my control, in my control. This isn't a depressing exercise, it's a liberating one. You are actively training your brain to stop wasting energy on what it cannot change and to redirect that energy toward what it can, your own judgments and actions. Similarly, the few minutes before you go to sleep are ideal for a gratitude reflection. Instead of scrolling through social media, mentally review your day and identify 3 things you can be grateful for. As Marcus Aurelius did, focus on the mundane and the profound, the warmth of your bed, the taste of your food, the health of your body, a moment of connection with a friend. This practice actively counters the brain's natural negativity bias and reinforces a baseline of contentment that is immune to external circumstances. The key to making any of this stick is to start impossibly small. Don't try to overhaul your entire life at once. The most sustainable path is to choose just one of these practices and commit to it for the next 30 days. It could be the morning reflection, the pause prompts, or the commute exercise. Tie it to an existing habit to make it stick. Do your morning reflection while your coffee brews, or practice your pause prompt right after you check your email. The consistency is what matters, not the duration. A 1-minute practice done every day is infinitely more powerful than an hour-long session done once a month. It is in the daily repetition that these Stoic principles move from your head into your bones, becoming not something you do, but a fundamental part of who you are. And so we reach the end of our journey through the psychology of invisible strength, a path that leads not to a destination, but to a new way of being. We've explored the foundational stones of this inner citadel, the profound power of focusing only on what is within our control, the liberating art of cognitive detachment that creates space between event and reaction, and the superpower of full presence that anchors us firmly in the here and now. We've seen how voluntary discomfort inoculates us against future adversity, how silent endurance transforms suffering into strength, and how mastering our inner dialogue allows us to author our own reality. We've practiced premeditating challenges to soften their blow, cultivated emotional equanimity for steady clarity, and discovered that our deepest purpose is found in living by virtue, not for external reward. These are not just abstract ideas, they are a toolkit for the soul, a set of daily practices that, when woven into the fabric of your life, build a resilience that is both quiet and unshakable. True strength, as the Stoics teach us, is not built in a single heroic moment, but in the countless small, invisible choices we make every day. It's the choice to take a breath instead of lashing out, to listen instead of interrupting, to endure a minor hardship with grace, to find gratitude for what is instead of anguish for what is not. This is the architecture of the inner citadel Marcus Aurelius spoke of when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That citadel, built brick by brick through these practices, becomes a fortress of peace that no external storm can ever breach. As we conclude, I encourage you to take a quiet moment for one final Stoic reflection. Look back over these principles. Which one resonated with you most deeply today? Was it the idea of withholding assent from your initial, reactive impressions? Or perhaps the practice of finding strength in serving your community? Maybe it was the simple, transformative power of undivided attention. Identify that one concept that truly struck a chord. Now make it personal and practical. How will you apply it tomorrow? Will you practice the 3-breath pause before responding to a trigger? Will you perform one act of voluntary discomfort? Will you dedicate 10 minutes to purposeful solitude? Choose one small, specific action. This is how philosophy moves from the page into your life, not through grand resolutions, but through a single, manageable commitment to live slightly more in alignment with your strength and virtue. If this exploration of Stoic wisdom has been valuable for you, consider subscribing to the channel. We delve into these timeless principles regularly, offering practical guidance for building a life of calm, focus, and resilience. And I would truly love to hear from you in the comments below. Share which Stoic practice you're choosing to focus on, or tell us about a moment this week where you managed to exercise your invisible strength. Your experiences inspire this entire community. Thank you for investing this time in your inner development. Remember, the goal is not perfection but progress. Each small step you take is another brick firmly placed in your own unassailable inner citadel.